Thank you everyone for joining us. I will just quickly do that welcome for the benefit of the recording again. So welcome, and I'm delighted to have with me Anthony Holland, who is the practice lead for SMB within ANS, James Marshall from Microsoft, who is the UK SMB Azure lead, and Ape Abangaway, who is the partner sales director for the global partner solutions within Microsoft. And I'm Lyndon Hughes, the head of direct sales for ANS. Really delighted to have Microsoft joining us today. Microsoft are a strategic partner for ANS and have been for a number of years. And we really enjoy and get a lot of value, and hope that you get some value from putting on these events together to help drive business growth and really help drive success within your organizations. So just to give an outline of what was going to happen today. So I'm going to hand over shortly to Ape, who's with us for the first 10 to 15 minutes to really talk through some of the high level observations and high level things that Ape has seen within some of the challenges, the macroeconomic challenges in particular within the small medium business community, and how some of those have been resolved. And then we'll then get into a Q&A with both James and Anthony, and further dive into those topics. So thank you for joining us. I will say that if you do have any questions throughout, we would encourage you to ask them either on the chat or come online, either audio, video, and ask. If you do, please do just use the raise hand feature, and whoever's speaking at that point will come to you. And also, I think everyone is on mute. I can see if you're not, please do go on mute. And yeah, so let's kick things off. So delighted to welcome you, Ape, to this webinar today. Would you mind just giving us a little bit of background to yourself? I know you've got some slides and some content you'd love to share with us. So over to you. Thanks, Ape.
Superb, Lyndon. Thank you very much for having me. I'm delighted to be here. It's one of my highlights of a day or a week is always spending time with partners, but also spending time with customers. So really pleased to be here. I'm also delighted to be the warm-up act to two amazing gentlemen who are going to come after me, and James and Anthony, who are really going to put a lot more context behind what I'm going to talk about, which is some of the macro realities that we're seeing out there, and how we're having to navigate this as one industry and one community on all of this. So I think, look, before I go into kind of more depth around it, I want to kind of start out by just setting the macro reality scene and what we're seeing out there. And it's undoubtedly, it's a VUCA environment is what we are seeing in the market. I'll go a little bit more around that, and that is really more, there's a lot of volatility out there. There's a lot of uncertainty. There's complexity in the current climate that we're in, and there's also ambiguity when you think about, okay, well, when, how long, how deep, etc., and questions. So the combination of high inflation, elevated energy prices, and labour market shortages have really interacted to push the UK economy into recession, and we're hearing that at the moment, that the recession, which is expected to persist throughout 2023 and 2024, will see UK living standards fall by 7% over the next 2 years, cancelling out 8 years of UK wage growth. The number of UK workers in unemployment will increase by over half a million, from 3.5% to 4.9% in 2024. On top of that, the Bank of England project that the recession will persist through, as I said, persist throughout 2023, 2024. And we are therefore seeing that this projected decline in our GDP is going to be about minus 1.5%. So not net, we are going through some challenging times, and we're seeing it now. Whether it's to do with, on top of that, when you think about, we've got still a war that's continuing to drive some of those challenges. We've got supply chain challenges that exist. The macro world is just putting a lot of pressure on overall economy. By the way, for those of you who are kind of listening going, oh my goodness, this is just doom and gloom from start, there is lots of good news to come later, I promise you. But I think it would be disingenuous of us if we didn't highlight the reality within which we're all having to operate and navigate through. Now, so what does that mean for kind of executive leaders? And currently facing this reality is that there's a number of pressures that they're having to deal with. The persistent high inflation means that 90% of CEOs say inflation will be ongoing significant factor in their region. 69% of CFOs believe non-labor input costs will continue to rise significantly. And the OBR have forecast that the UK has already, as I already mentioned, entered into a recession. And there are different views around how deep that is. And of course, and this is where the ambiguity comes in as well, and also how long this is going to be for us as an economy. And then, sorry, the other thing is then the other pressures that they're then having to navigate, and this our customers out there, your customers, and in SMB particularly, is that scarcity and the expense around talent. We do know that there's a skills crunch out there. 50% of HR leaders expect increased talent competition in the next 6 months, and 46% of HR leaders anticipate attrition will remain high in in-demand roles in 2023. The talent crunch continues, and 55% of UK organisations essentially face a skills shortage. And that means that there's also having to be a real effort and focus, and your customers, our customers, our mutual customers are having to think about rethink. There's the great rethink that's going on out there in terms of employees thinking about where they want to be today. And we've all heard about the great resignation, and what that means in terms of the labour force. I was talking to a recruiter earlier in the week, and they were saying that the challenge they're seeing within their own clients is that the sort of 50 and above are leaving because they have different options, and the world has changed for the way how they see things, particularly post-pandemic. And the challenge is the earlier in career cohort that's coming through, there's just not enough of them coming through as well. So that just continues that whole skills and talent crunch that we talked to. And if I don't play with my mouse, there we go, sorry. And then another pressure that execs having to deal with, and I'd already mentioned it a bit earlier, which is essentially the global supply chain constraints. 50% of chief supply chain officers expect a net increase in supply chain costs in 2023. And 67% of those supply chain officers say they will likely need to pass input cost increases to consumers in 2023. So against that backdrop, however, as I said, now we've gotten through some of the challenging news on what's going on, and we all see it, we all know it. It's interesting to see some different reactions to it, right? 69% of CFOs reported an increase in spend on digital capabilities through the recession. I think it was a report, a different report I'd seen from Gartner that said that now digital organizations within businesses are saying that 70% of them are saying that they're now responsible for revenue, or they have a revenue ownership or accountability because of the role they play in engaging and driving new value into their customer space. Very, very different reality that we're having to navigate, which is great. And as I said, there's a lot more positive news. And while 8% indicate plans to reduce funding in terms of CFOs, a majority, 65% of respondents have actually said that they are going to increase their spend through the recession. I was talking to one of my peers the other day, and we were getting an update on the CBI conference that was a week or so ago, which is CBI, as you'll know, represents about 60%, 60,000 UK businesses. And one of the questions that the head of the CBI asked to the room was, look, how many of you are looking to invest in growth in this period? And over 2/3 of the room put their hands up and said they were. So the point here is that, whilst we are seeing headwinds, whilst we know that we're in this VUCA environment, actually there's a lot more appetite to invest, and it's about investing in the dip, if you like, and getting yourself fit in. And I know my colleagues after me will follow up and talk about exactly how they're doing this. But really, the reality is in this: how do you respond in this climate? And the way I talk about this and I frame it is really around this term called digital determination. As I meet customers and I speak to CIOs, CEOs, the one thing that's always struck me and is the resilience that exists in organizations and their leadership today. And I think some of that is born out of the 2 years COVID challenge that we all went through, has built a different mindset, a different resilience in leadership. And in that, the other thing that's also become a realization is that actually digital needs to be an answer to us navigating the challenges that we're going through. It was a few months ago, I was with a customer manufacturer, and they had a big shock that they had to move to remote quite quickly. And they're over 250 million in revenue turnover, over 2,000 staff that immediately went remote, but they had to continue to deliver the service and the offerings that they deliver to their customers in order to survive. So they very quickly had to embrace and have a digital determination built into that. How do they engage and connect in terms of the culture of the organization still within their people? How do they know what's going on? How do they make sure that they're still staying connected and being optimized in operation, but staying connected with customers? It was all very, very much the reality for them during the pandemic. And that means that they're now, as they've come out of it and we're going into another headwinds, they are automatically thinking digital as they think about what do we do with our employees? How do we retain the employees we've got? How do we go and attract the right employees? How do we make sure from a customer perspective we stay closer to them? How do we continue to innovate and stay relevant and make sure that as we come out at the other end, we are fitter, stronger and ready to really take advantage of the opportunities that will come as we come out of the climate we're in? And so really, I think there are three imperatives I'd say that in this climate you should be thinking about as a customer. One is around optimize. How do we optimize the operation and the organization? And as I said, I know James will talk quite eloquently to what that means from specifically from some of our technology, and I know Anthony, I'm sure, will touch on some of that. So I won't go into much detail. I'll leave it to them. But certainly one of them is how do we optimize? The second thing, as you think about your organization, you think about how do I get fitter and navigate the climate. I mean, it's how do we deliver scale? How do we deliver the value that we currently have, or the value we've innovated at scale? So I think the next thing to think about is its scale. And the third thing I've already touched on, which is around innovate, right? I think now more than ever, it's about innovation. How do we innovate within the organization that we are today? And how does digital play a key role in delivering innovation, but also reducing that time to value as we go out into market? And so if three things, if you summarize that, it's really about costs, about growth, and it's about business model transformation. It's about overall business value transformation and innovation. And how do we maximize our talent around all of these three imperatives that I've mentioned and talked to briefly? And so when you think about the bottom line from an SMB perspective, no, without a shadow of a doubt, the bottom line is technology, and as I said, digital determination is absolutely the answer. And it is what I hear when I see customers and I speak to different customers, and by the way, to all different parts of the organization, whether it's to the CFO, whether it's to the CMO, the CEO, the COO, every single, what we at Microsoft term room of the house, is clear that in order to navigate the current climate we're in order to actually optimize my organization, in order to drive innovation within my organization, in order for me to become transform my part of the business, digital is the answer in there. And so what I'm looking for is really the right partnership and the right connections and the right innovation to make sure that we achieve and deliver that. And as I come to an end and land and hand over to the other folks, I think it would be remiss of me not to finish, of course, with a Satya quote. But I think, rather, you can read the quote yourself, so I won't repeat it. But what I will say is I'm hoping that you'll, in terms of takeaways from what I've just said over the last few minutes, is this, that whilst there's the likelihood is that we are in a recession, there's a lot of actually opportunity for organizations that are fit, that have the right balance sheets and have the right innovation and have the right talent. It isn't about not investing, it's about being responsible with that investment. And you'll hear that, I'm sure, from many, many areas, which is actually the CFO wants to, and I hear this from CFOs as well, which is actually I want to invest, but I want to make sure it's a responsible investment, and I want to be sure that actually the return on that investment, we can reduce that time to value for it. So that there is absolutely an appetite, and it is the right thing to do and the right place to do, is to invest, to make sure that you can optimize the organization, to invest to make sure that you're driving the right efficiencies within the business in order to innovate. And of course, create an organization and a fit business as we come out of this current environment and climate. I will pause there and hand over back to you, Lyndon. I don't know if you've got any questions or want me to just hand over directly to the gentleman.
Thank you, Ape. I'll just take a pause there to ask if anyone has got any questions, either directly to Ape or can be posted in the chat. Just take a few seconds in case anyone has. Not just now. So Ape, thank you so much for joining us today. Just a quick summary that I wrote down. I think there's sort of three key takeaways really were, optimize your operations. That's about cost. Delivering scale within your business. That's about growth, and really looking at how you can innovate and sort of really transforming your business model through digital and technology. So thanks so much for joining us. I know that you're at a conference today, and you've joined us to deliver that message. So thank you. We're now going to. I think we may have a question. Bear with me.
Yep.
Okay, very interesting question. Thank you, Alex. So Ape, I don't know if you can see that, but I'll just read it out for the benefit of the wider audience. So what happened to Microsoft UK SMB revenues in the past two recessions?
Well, I may have to deflect that to James, who was I think around during the past two recessions. But I was at the partner end, so perhaps I'll answer as a partner and what I saw from the partner perspective on this. I think certainly from the partner perspective, there was, it would be disingenuous for me to not say there wasn't a shrinkage. There was a shrinkage, but I think what I would say the difference then for me at the partner side was the role technology was playing in businesses, in industry then is dramatically different to the role technology is playing today. And I think that if technology was as embedded in processes and was able to actually automate, and I'll give you an example. I was talking to a partner a few months ago who was talking about they were working with an SMB customer who had two people that were processing invoices on a daily basis, and they were processing, it was in the hundreds of invoices that they had to deal with every day. What this partner went away and did was actually help with business process automation, and essentially meant that the invoices could now be managed through technology as opposed to individuals. And what happened is those two individuals were then redeployed into areas of higher value creation. And what you would see as low value creation, I see you nodding your heads, you guys know this, is just being done by technology and by digital. So my point here is that I think that what you're seeing today is digital is playing a far greater role in the organization, in the optimization piece that I talked to before of organizations than it was in the past two recessions. So that's the way I would say I'd answer that. James, I don't know if you would have a different perspective, given that you were within Microsoft in those periods as well.
Yeah, I mean, I've been around a while, and I would say, if you want to know Microsoft's revenue position, right, globally, it's all there for the world to see as a publicly traded company. I think the more important question is really, how has Microsoft helped SMBs in the last two recessions? And I think our business remains strong in the UK and globally as a reflection of the power that our customers have felt of the use of our technology to help them innovate and survive through recession. And so whether it's going back in time to the early days of Office 365 or on-premises and hosted solutions, kind of pre-Azure and hypercloud, and as we've moved through the last sort of 10 years or so of innovation, time and again, SMB has been this melting pot of innovation where we've seen customers doing the most incredible things. And actually, the technology is the great leveler in the sense that many years ago, when I first joined Microsoft, you know, the types of things that you could do with technology with a preserve of the Coca-Colas of the world, right? The people with many billions of dollars and huge IT budgets and resources. Whereas now, my mum can rock up to the Azure portal with a credit card and have access to exactly the same technology as those mega corporations and businesses all across the world, which means they can do things that they could never have achieved, never have even conceived of before, way quicker. And I think that is the true representation of what of Microsoft's success. Sure, it shows in the balance sheet, and by all means, you know, you can go look at that. But I think the real story is in that SMBs continue to choose Microsoft as a trusted technology provider because time and again we've helped them.
Yeah, James, if I'd just like to build on that quickly as well. I think it's the difference in, I know Lyndon and Anthony, you're going to talk about it later as well, but I think it's not just what we're bringing innovating, but actually I think the tightness with our partner ecosystem and how partners are also bringing solutions to help SMBs through this climate. And I'm sure there's something later on you guys are going to be talking about, but that's the kind of example of the Microsoft and its partner ecosystem together bringing real solutions to real challenges that our customers face today.
Amazing. Thank you, Ape. Thank you, James. Ape, I'm just going to move on to the Q&A with Anthony and James now. Do you need to?
I'm going to, yeah, if you don't mind. Look, thank you for having me.
No problem,
I hope there was some value out of that. If there are any other questions you want me answered later on, please ping them to me. Thank you once again, and enjoy the rest of the event, everyone.
Thank you, Ape.
Thanks, Ape.
Cheers.
So just shifting gears very slightly, we're going to now move on to, I think it was titled a fireside chat. Unfortunately, there's no fires within either of our offices, so we'll just have to imagine that one. But it's a Q&A with Anthony and James, just to really explore some of the points that Ape made a little bit further. And I think, you know, it's fair to say, just you know, taking some of the notes that I've made from Ape's talk in the first half of this webinar, you know, is that change, I think we can agree, has been the only constant for business and IT leaders such as yourselves this year. So, you know, between economic turbulence and inflation that we're seeing and shifting customer sentiment, you know, leaders have had to shift focus many times this year. And in the preceding years as well, as we know. So I'd just like to come firstly to James, just to sort of build on some of the content and points that Ape has shared, and just really, you know, ask for your view on what you're seeing within the SMB community, and specifically some of the, you know, the challenges that you're seeing.
I mean, I think the reality is that going down to the next level from Ape's points earlier, like those, as he said, there's some big macro issues, right, at a 10,000 foot level that affect everyone from homemakers to business, you know, leaders and everything in between. I think the reality, though, day to day, is that the bill that lands on the desk is the thing that is tangible, right? That's the thing people are seeing, whether it's increased energy costs, increased labor costs, increased supply chain costs, whatever it might be. It feels like everything is getting very real all of a sudden. It's not an over there problem, but, you know, when your tariff is up with your energy provider or whatever it might be, you know, it suddenly becomes very real. And front and center on the mind of a lot of people is the tactical, how do I get through this next period? You know, how do I survive through the winter? How do I survive through the next 6 months? And, you know, in some cases, in a literal sense, keep the lights on, right? Technology innovation and thinking about those future horizons of all the cool stuff I'd like to get to can seem like it should take a back seat in the face of needing to deal with the, you know, the stuff that's right in front of me. And actually, when we speak to a lot of business leaders, partners that help them, the ecosystem at large, people are keen to understand how can technology help get through those things. So in some cases, it is as simple as, how do I get all of these servers and this expensive air conditioning and all the rest of that I've got running at the back of my office or whatever? How do I get that switched off? Yeah. You know, how do I take that cost out of my business whilst still getting the value from it? But is that surely there's got to be a way through the cloud that I can still have my stuff, but not be paying 10 times the cost because my energy bills have gone up. Other times it might be needing to redeploy people like, hey, I've got all these things to do and I can't hire right now. How can I use my people better so that when there's humans doing something, it's the highest value task? How can I use technology to automate some of the stuff that really I don't need someone clicking through the same process over and over again, or doing the same batch process, every month? How do I use technology to save me that time that I can use those people to do the stuff that I can't hire for at the moment? It's things like that that make it very real for people. I think the goal is to highlight that there is tech that can do that. It's not difficult or out of reach. You might not know about it yet, but it is right there. And obviously folks like yourselves can help people realize the power of that quite quickly and quite easily. And in some cases in just a few minutes, let alone hours or days or months, you can transform the way people operate and start to see the benefits of some of that technology like super quickly. To give you a real world example of my own, I've been building and hosting websites since I was a kid. And I recently wrote a website, and I could do it from my iPad. In fact, I took my kids to soft play and I was on my iPad. I was writing code through the browser on GitHub and pushing that into a website live hosted on Azure from my iPad with a coffee while my kids were running around soft play. If you'd told me 10, 15 years ago that that would be possible, I would have laughed you out of the building. But the fact that I can do that now in seconds, I can start to put stuff together and push it live. That's incredibly powerful. So it's things like that. There's those quick wins that just by changing the way you do something or using a bit of cloud, you can start to get through some of those challenges.
I don't know what's more impressive, being able to write code at a soft play on your iPad, or blocking out the noise to achieve that in the first place.
I think from my point of view, just to echo your comments there, James, I think it's a really difficult world that we live in right now, and it's very easy to stumble into a world where you're firefighting and to get to the point where essentially you're focusing on reducing that bill, reducing that cost, and trying to get to a point of efficiency based on cost alone. In reality, technology doesn't work like that. You do have to speculate to accumulate. You do have to take that time to take a step back and think, am I actually doing this in the right way? Am I going to really free up these members of staff to be able to go and deliver something extraordinary if they are stuck in a world of daily checks, or stuck in a world of keeping the lights on inside a data center, or even worse, stuck in a world of, as Ape mentioned before, physically processing invoices and things like that? All of those things could potentially be resolved by trying to take that step back, thinking outside the box, and fundamentally get to that point where your business is that bit more nimble through the process.
Yeah, thank you, Ant. I think just moving on and building on some of the points that Ape talked about at a more macro level. So the points you made around delivering scale and growth. Just to sort of come to you, James. Really, you've mentioned one example there of obviously your own personal example, but the other example that you highlighted was just taking cost out of your business, moving it from on in your offices or in your server room in your offices, and just moving servers into Azure, and the cost and benefits that can bring. But we can also look at that as a way of helping to deliver scale within a business. So just moving on to the point that Ape made, have you got any examples of businesses or organizations that you've worked with that have been able to deliver scale or deliver growth through technology adoption?
Yeah, well, I mean, not just technology adoption, but I think technology, I'll say rationalization, right?
Yeah.
In that most businesses today, regardless of what they do, have tech somewhere, right? Whether it's the thing they deliver as a business or a thing they use to deliver their business. But like every company is at some point a technology company. I think the scale potential comes in being able to take the way you've done things today, however big or small, however legacy or modern, and find ways to either improve the efficiency of it or improve the scale and automation of it to make it, for example, easier to manage or whatever it might be. And, we've got plenty of examples of working with organizations, big and small, where, they've got a line of business application that they bought off the shelf, or somebody wrote using Access many years ago or whatever. And by being able to rationalize and modernize that, put it into a hosted cloud environment, not only are they better able to support that app, which is important, but they can deliver it to more of their end users in a more secure way, arguably in some cases more cheaply, but at least more efficiently in terms of the cost for the value. And that's not an overnight click of a button. There is a journey to go on in working with experts like yourselves in figuring out, like, what have I got, what do I need, where does that need to go. But that speculate to accumulate pieces are important, right? By putting a bit of time and effort behind figuring some of that stuff out, yes, you might spend a little bit up front to do that, but the long-term benefits of decreased cost of ownership, or whatever, and the scalability of that far outweigh the short-term pain. And scale works both ways, right? There's scaling up and scaling down. I think tech is also one of those areas where people feel they have to invest big upfront on-prem in order to cater for an unknown future need. Whereas, of course, one of the oldest and most principal advantages of elastic cloud is that it's elastic, right? You scale it up when you need it more and scale it down when you need it less. And so, like, if you're a business that has people who use remote desktops, you don't need them running at 2 o'clock in the morning, but you can bet if you're hosting it on-prem, you're probably paying for that. Whereas in a cloud environment, of course, you can automate, scale that down, turn it off. And then, at 7 a.m. when people start to, turn things on, the business starts to kind of get into gear again, you spin them up. So scale works both ways, but it starts with rationalizing the technology you have and then figuring out, like, how do I get to this nirvana that I want to get to? Like, what are the steps that I take? And a big part of it as well is also tackling technical debt. We're all sitting on it, whether it's terabytes of file storage or disks that have been burned and are stored in a fireproof safe somewhere, or whatever it might be. We've all got technical debt, data debt, legacy sitting around. And the way I describe it to a lot of folks is like when you move house, we've got that loft where you just keep putting stuff, and then one day you move house and you've got to tackle the stuff, right? Because you're not going to drag it all along with you. And no one really wants to do it, but you feel so much better and leaner and more effective if you do. And that's the same in tech as well.
Yeah, indeed. Can resonate with that last point in the loft for sure. Yeah. And sorry, answer to you.
I think from my point of view on that one, the sort of fear to make that jump and to say, you know what, let's take this drive into cloud. Let's use Elastic Cloud. Let's make that step. I think there's an awful lot of businesses that will sit and look at that and think, how do I possibly get from where I am today to being able to use that sort of approach? And again, it's that take a step back, think about it more logically, think about how we do it, yes, but why are we doing it? What's the value behind doing this thing? Well, like you say, all the flexibility that comes with it. There's all the ability to be able to change and be nimble and to scale as and when required. But best of all, you get to that world where essentially you're not spending in the long run. You're not in the same position where you have to cover that cost of all of the equipment for the worst case scenario. You're only paying for what you need when you need it. Now, I think one of the pain points that we see with customers all the time is they will come to us and say, right, so what is this? What is the how? How do I make this step? What is the next jump for me to allow me the ability to be able to adapt like this? And frankly, it's different for every business, but that's exactly where for us, ANS, we come into play to really assist customers and hold their hand through that process.
Yeah, thank you, Ant. James, just I'm conscious we've probably got about 7 minutes left of time. So just to start, the final point really is just if you could highlight to us and to the wider audience, what Microsoft, what programs you have in place, what support you have in place for SMBs, and how that sort of transcends through partners like ANS and others within the community to help SMBs take advantage of some of this digital technology that we're talking about.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, for me, it spans a couple of different domains. The first is the free to access, like hands-off self-service stuff, of which, we have a slew of materials, that help customers understand how the technology can use it. And I'm talking things from skills, so understanding how to use cloud, but also documentation in terms of scenarios for managing cloud. There's a whole bunch of stuff you can access that is ready to go self-serve if you want to. Now, that's not for everyone, right? And for a lot of people, doing IT is not the core of what they want to do. They don't have the time or the inclination. So I get that. So there are, of course, programs and things that we help our customers with through our partner ecosystem. So folks like you, of course, where, you know, whether it's helping them get their first leg up into the cloud through things like delivering proof of concept activities, or accelerating project growth through things like credits and funding offers and things like that. You know, we have all of those sorts of things that can support that customer journey. Clearly, like, there's an element of needing to understand what your growth plans are, needing to understand what your goals look like, and all of those kinds of things. But for customers that have a defined project and need to hand raise for the help, we have ways that we can help folks. And skills I mentioned, I touched on, that's critical, of course, whether you're doing it yourself or doing it through a partner, is ensuring that there is that good knowledge transfer process. And so, as well as the self-serve things and the partner-led things, we can underpin all of that through things like certification. So if you have IT folks within your organization, or perhaps critically, you've got people that today don't have those productive digital skills, but you want them to get them so that tomorrow they are better able to serve the needs of the business. And I'm thinking things like getting people skilled around data and analytics, not to become machine learning experts, but just to be able to unlock new insights about the data that your business already has. There's a whole set of skills planning and certifications that can help with that as well. But like I say, a lot of it is self-serve. A lot of it is surfaced up through our partners when it comes to things like programs and investments. Our headline program would be things like AMP, the Azure Migrate and Modernize program, which is all about taking customers on that journey through a defined engagement where, you know, we can invest with the partner to help them achieve success. You know, we have all sorts of different things. What I would say though is, if you're sitting there listening to this and thinking, I've got this kernel of an idea, I don't know whether it's possible or not, there are no stupid questions. Stick your hand up and speak to someone, because it might be that you've got the next big thing that's going to transform your business. And it might be that there's a program behind you that can help you make it a reality.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you, James. You know, speaking of personal experience of the Azure Migrate and Modernize program, you know, I've seen that support and help transform businesses across the small medium business community in the last 2-3 years, and would encourage anyone on the call to, as James says, to get in touch with any idea, to consider some of the programs that are available. I'm conscious that we have got a few minutes left, so I will just finish very quickly on something that will signpost you to after the event, which is the ANS Ambition Fund. So the ANS Ambition Fund builds on the support that our partner ecosystem of Microsoft, of which is a key strategic partner within that, and build on some of the programs that James has talked about, and really is there to support small medium businesses with digital transformation, digital adoption. So this we'll signpost you to it after the event. Do take a look on our website. But if it is something that you would like to consider or get in touch with us about, we'll share our details after the webinar. I will just finally, as I'm conscious we've got 3 minutes left, move on to any final questions that you may have for Anthony or James. Again, if you want to come on audio or video to ask, please do, or you can drop them in the chat. Okay, so that just leaves me to say thank you, James, for joining us today. Thank you, Anthony. It's been a pleasure to host you guys today. Thank you for everyone that's joined us live. Appreciate you taking the time to spend with us today. The session, as I said, has been recorded, and before it is made public, we will obviously seek permission should we need to. So thank you again for joining us. I trust that this has added value to you, your business, and I look forward to engaging with you hopefully in the future. So thank you, everybody. Thanks, Anthony. Thanks, James.
Cheers, Lyndon.
Thanks, Lyndon.